Okay, so today we're going to start up with cutting sections through a SketchUp model. And a lot of you guys have already experienced this or done this. My goal is to get a better quality output out of your SketchUp model. Sections, I would say, are probably the most important drawing that we as architecture professionals do, because it has everything to do with how we experience a building. And I think in kind of the early stages of your design education, what the default is to draw out a plan and map out space, etc. And instead of doing that, if you think about what a building is like in section, that's how we actually experience the building. If I'm standing here experiencing this space, it's as if it were a section plane. I understand that there's a certain ceiling height, there's a certain length to the room, and that room feels a certain way because I'm standing in it. I don't ever float above and look down at a plan view. So really a section is about the experience of the building and what it's like to be in the building, what are the proportions. And so therefore, it's probably the most important drawing. If I end up in a review with you guys where there are drawings, which happens in 220, sometimes in 121 there's drawings, sometimes not, depends what section you're in. If I were in a review, the first drawing that I would look at to understand your building is a section. And so I think it's really important to think about the section and to do good quality sections. So we're going to spend today talking about doing a section using SketchUp. And there's some gripes that I have about the system for cutting sections in SketchUp, and I'll talk about those a little bit later on. But for the most part, it's a pretty easy way of getting a good quality output. So once again, I have my same file that I've been working on. We did an elevation view. We did a plan view. We can look at those. There's my elevation view that I did. There's my plan view right there. And so now it's time to do a perspective view, or excuse me, a section view. So the first thing that I need to think about is, where should I cut a hole through my building? So if I'm going to look at the building in section, what do I want to look at? And so in this particular building, there are a variety of options for what might be interesting. It might be interesting to understand the relationship of this living room space here, in which case I could cut a section using the same section tool that we used for plan. The only difference is that it would be in the vertical orientation instead of the horizontal orientation. If it were in the vertical orientation, like this, for example, and I went to move it and cut through my building, I could get a sense for what this room would look like and what it would be like to stand in there. The truth is that this is not a particularly exciting section because there's not a whole lot going on in here. So I'm not going to do that section. I'm going to do the reverse section, or the section that goes the other direction. So let me take a section cut, or a section plane, on the back of the building here. And then I will move that section plane through the building using the move tool until I feel like I've found a good place to cut through the building. So maybe it's right here in kind of the entry, and then I can see the hallway. Well, maybe we need to go a little bit further. Right there, maybe. Because it shows the entry, it shows the living room, it shows the hallway that goes between, and then it shows one of the bedrooms. So you have to kind of figure out what's the right view, what looks right. Once I have that section cut established and I'm happy with it, a couple things that I have to do. Number one, I have to switch my view or my camera into a parallel projection mode, because once again, a section should be in parallel projection. And when I did that, it looks like I'm not quite in my correct orientation. Let me go ahead and go to my standard views. I think it's the back view that I want to see here. Nope. Standard views, let me go to the front view. There you go. That's the orientation that I wanted. It's in its parallel projection, which is good. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. See this? About right there. Looks pretty good. And I have to make sure that I turn off the axes, the guides, and the section planes so that I get to that white drawing. I don't want that grayish background. I want to make sure it's nice and white. So here it is. I'm in hidden line mode, so I'm ready to set this up. But before I do it, I want to save my scene. So let me go into scenes here. I'm going to click the plus sign, and we're going to create the scene. This scene I'm going to call, let's call it section 01. There it is. That allows me to come back to this view over and over again. So here it is. In the handout, I talk about using the section cut face plugin again. Remember, that wasn't installed on the lab machine, so you can't do it. If you use your home computer, you can install that plugin. And what that does is it fills in everything that we've cut through, which can be useful. But right now, it's fine. I'm going to go ahead and go to File, and then Export 2D Graphic. And I'm going to put this onto my OneDrive for today. And today is 129. New folder. This is going to be the spring of 2017. And this is going to be underscore lines. I'll go to options, make sure my options are still set. They were set from last time on this computer, so that's big enough for right now. I'll go ahead and say OK. And then export. OK, so now I'm going to go back to my styles here. We're going to go to Edit, and I'm going to look in X-ray mode here. I'm going to go to Faces, and then click on X-ray. I get a little bit more information right here. It's really not enough to worry about. I don't think it's going to add much. So I'm going through and I'm kind of editing this for what feels right, what looks right. The other option that I could do is I could turn off, if I go to View and I turn off the section cut, I get the whole building, in which case I could then go to X-ray view. It may or may not be useful. In both of my cases, neither one seems particularly useful, so I'm going to skip that. I'm going to go back to my section cuts. There's my cut. I'll go back to Select here. Now the next thing is shadows and seeing what the shadows look like. Now, I told you that I had a gripe with the way that SketchUp does this, and that is that if you cut a section through the building and you turn on shadows, suddenly it's as if that half of the building didn't exist, and the light just penetrates the building. So it's not really that accurate from a shadows perspective. If I go to View and I turn on shadows, we can take a look. In this particular case, as the shadows come in, all of these shadows are as if that back half of the building was just gone. So it's not really doing a whole lot for me. If I had some terrain outside and the building was casting a shadow on the terrain, maybe that would be useful. But once again, in this particular setup, the shadows aren't really helping a whole lot. So I'm going to skip that one as well. So let me turn off the shadows. And so the last thing is to go back to my sketchy edges, and I'm going to do my pen gray again. And remember, I have to go back and turn off the guides and turn off the section planes. There we go. And now I can go to File, Export 2D Graphic. And this one would be pen. Export. And I also like the airbrush with endpoints right there. But I do, once again, have to turn off the section plane and turn off the guides. And then I'll go to File, Export 2D Graphic. And we'll call this one Airbrush. And I'll go ahead and export. The other part of this that can be useful is if I go back to my normal default styles, sometimes doing one of the plain colored versions like this will help us distinguish what we can see through and what we can't see through. So I'll do a colored version. Let me turn off the axes and turn off the guides. And I'll go to File, Export 2D Graphic. And we'll call this one Color. And I'll export. So that now gives me all of the various pieces that I'm going to use in Photoshop. So let me go ahead and open up Photoshop. And actually, I can go ahead and close SketchUp too. And in Photoshop, I'm going to go to File and then Open. And I'm going to open up that first drawing, which was the lines drawing. There we go. And then I'll go to File and then Place. And we'll drop in the rest of these. We'll drop in the pen and confirm. We'll go to File and then Place. And we'll drop in the airbrush and confirm. We'll go to File and then Place. Drop in the color and confirm. So number one, I like to have that background be an editable layer. So I'm going to say Layer from Background. I just right-click on it, say Layer from Background, and we'll call this Lines. And again, organization here is always useful, so we'll rename this to be Pen. We'll rename this to be Airbrush. And we'll rename this to be Color. And Color, Airbrush, and Pen should all be set to multiply so that we can see through them. OK, so now it comes time to start really setting up what is this section going to look like, and how do I make it feel like it's a true section. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to fill in what we've cut through. And typically in a section, we fill that in with a dark color so that we can really see, yes, this is what's been cut in this particular building. So I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer. And I'm going to call this Cut. And let's put it down here above the Lines layer. Let's turn everything off except for the lines. And I'll zoom in a bit, maybe one back. And I'm going to use the magic wand on the Lines layer here to select the things that have been cut through. So we've cut through this. Like that. So I've now selected all of the walls that have been cut through. And I'll move my active layer to the cut layer. I'll use my paintbrush tool with black to go ahead and paint in everything that's been cut through. Now, since this is on a multiply layer, or it should be on a multiply layer, oops. Yep. Good, they're all on multiply layers. When we turn these back on, the cut is going to maintain that black color. So now I have to think about what the ground looks like as part of this particular section cut. So we'll work from here. I can work on the same cut layer. That's fine. And I'm going to make some selections for the ground. So first off, I'm just going to use the regular lasso tool. And I'm going to draw a slightly sloping line that goes up about like that. So I've got that. Then on this side, I'm going to hold down the Shift key to add to it. And I'm going to go a little bit lower, maybe like that. Let's add a little bit more to this, maybe like that. I want it not to be flat. I want it to have a little bit of slope to it. And then I'll use my rectangular marquee with the Shift tool to add the rest of the bottom to that. And it looks like I need to add some more right in here, like that. Now I can go ahead and paint that in Cut 2. So I'll use my paintbrush. I'm on the cut layer. I'll go ahead and paint that part in as well. So if we start to look at this as a drawing, we can see that it's reading as a section cut. Now, once again, I love the grass brush because I think it adds a little bit of texture to the ground. You don't have to use the grass brush, but I think it looks nice. So I'm going to work on the cut layer. I'm going to work with the clone stamp tool using the grass brush. And I will click and I'll hold down Alt. I'll click to copy from, and then we'll make a little bit of grass right on the edge here. right, something like that. I'll come over to the other side. Oops, I didn't need that. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'll hold down Alt to copy from, and we're going to go ahead and do the grass here. To create that nice section cut. So now I've established the section cut as part of this. I have the cut through the building. I have the ground plane that's been established. Now it's time to put some kind of a backdrop in place for this particular building. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Creative Commons search for some kind of a background image. So search.creativecommons.org. And again, I'll use Flickr. And this is probably, I'll go back to my Yosemite Meadow search here. And it's once again about finding the right look. Right? So maybe it's this. We have to be careful of the scale of the trees, etc. This piece looks pretty good right in there, so that could probably work. And again, one of the things that I tend to do is I tend to open a variety of these images. And when I find one that I kind of like, that's the one I'll end up using. So we'll go through. And a large part of the work in this is always finding the right image. And if you don't spend the time and you don't find the right image, it won't ever look as good as it could. So once I go through and I open a few different ones, I'll find one that looks approximately the way I want it to, and then I'll go ahead and download the full-size version. So here it is. I'm downloading it. And I'll try this one out. We'll see if it looks good. All right, so let me show it in its folder. Let me copy it. And then I'll put it into today's folder. And we'll go ahead and paste that in place. There it is. And now I'll go back to my Photoshop file here. Let me zoom out just a little bit so I can see more. And I'll go to File and then Place. And I'm going to drop this image into my drawing here. So it needs to get a little bit bigger, so let's enlarge that. Like this. And for right now, I'll switch it to be on multiply so I can kind of see through it. And I need to adjust a bit for this look. So it looks like as I cut the section, I have to think about where the horizon line is and where my section is. So in this particular image, the slope is going the opposite way that I want it to. So while this isn't necessarily a great practice, I'm just going to flip this horizontally so that we're looking at it this way. And now the slope's going the way I want it to. It's not perfect. If you were actually at the site, you would have pictures of the site. And guess what? These are all backwards now. But it'll work for the look of what we're doing. And I'm going to lower this down just a little bit. And you have to decide, is it an upslope or a downslope? If it's a downslope, you'd be looking at it more like this because it'd be going down. If it's an upslope, you'd see a little bit of the grass there, which we're seeing a little bit of it there. OK, now I want to make a few adjustments. You see how the trees are angling a little bit because of the lens that was shot. I'm going to go ahead and commit to this for now. And then I'm going to go back to Edit, Transform, and I'm going to go to Skew. Let me zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to adjust this image so that the trees are going more straight up and down. Because remember, this is in parallel projection. I might also find that I really need to push this up a little bit more now that I've made that adjustment. So something like that. Now the trees are going straight up and down. It feels like it belongs as part of this background. So I'll go ahead and commit to it like that. I have the trees. And now it's time to start thinking about how do I integrate this background into the building itself. Obviously, there's a lot of places in here that I have window glass. So I want to think about what's in the background, what's window glass, and what should be completely masked off altogether. So let me turn off the background for just a second and look at this building. So we can see that if I were to use Magic Wand, that's, oops, let me move on to my lines layer here. That's a window, that's a window, that's a window. So is that little piece. These are windows. These are windows. That's a window, that's a window, that's a window, that's a window, that's a window. This is cut through a room, so there's not a window there. Okay? This is completely outside, so that looks through this little entry alcove, so that would be seeing everything. And obviously, what's happening in the back here would be seen as well. So now that I have those pieces selected, I can go back to my background image, and I can click on the Add Layer Mask. And that's then going to cut out for what I'm seeing through the building. Now, when I look at this, I'm still having a hard time discerning, of course I know that this is inside, but what's the difference between this being outside and this being inside? It's hard to kind of tell. So I want to do something to the glass to make it have a little bit of a window effect to it. And I'll do that by adding an adjustment layer to skew the color just a little bit. So let me go ahead and go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and I'm going to do a Hue and Saturation adjustment. Or at least I'm going to try a Hue and Saturation adjustment. And I'm going to see if I can shift the hue of the background image a little bit. So let me pull it that way. Let's see here. Might be a little bit much. Yeah, something like that. Remember, we can turn it on and turn off. You can see that it's changed just a little bit. But obviously, I don't want all of this to have that applied. So let me go back to my lines layer, and I'm going to select just the windows. Like that. And I'm going to, on the mask for the hue and saturation adjustment, I'm going to go ahead and paint in black. Oops, it's backwards of what I wanted. Let me do select and then inverse. So that the outside, it does not have that little tint applied to it. And so there's different strategies for how you do it. You can do the hue and saturation adjustment. The reason that I like this is we can mess around with things like the overall saturation until we find, oh, that seems like the right look. Right? We can also choose a lightness or darkness if we wanted to tint the window a little bit more. You get the idea. At some level, this is going to read more like a window than the background. And we're trying to make a distinct contrast between the two. So now that I have those pieces set up, we're going to do a little bit of artificial lighting in the scene. And so sometimes people like this, sometimes people don't like it. I'm going to do it in the bedroom primarily because you'll be able to see it against the wall. Before I do that, though, I think it would be helpful to have some background texture. So in the case of this particular building, it's concrete, so the walls would be concrete. At least that's the vision that I had. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in, I'll go to File and then Place. I'll bring in a piece of concrete. And it would be nice if I didn't have to go searching for the piece of concrete. So let's see. Yeah, I have it from last semester. Again, you would just go in and you would do a search for it. There's some little concrete tiles. We'll envision these on the scale of my building. So first thing I need to do is make this small enough so that it feels like it's on the right scale for what I'm doing. Zoom in just a little bit so we can see here. Maybe something like that in scale. I'll go ahead and commit to the change. There it is. And now I need to make lots of versions of this. So let's go ahead and I'll select it. Control-C, Control-V to copy and paste. And that will let me put this one next to it. And we'll put that one next to it. Put that one below it. Looks like it's not quite a perfect tile, but it'll work for what we're doing here. Each time I'm just Control V for paste so that I can put these in. Spacebar to move it over. I'll do a little bit more here. Almost there. All right, last one. There we go. So now I have the texture to represent my walls, but if we look at my layer stack, oh my goodness, we have a lot of layers. So I need all of those to suddenly become one layer so I can work with them. So I'll select the first one here, and I'll come up to the last one right here. And with all of those selected, I'll right-click and I'll say Merge Layers. And that merges them all into just layer 20. I'm also going to rename this to be Concrete Texture for clarity. And now I need to control where that is applied. So let's turn it off. Let's work. I'll turn these off as well. And I'll use my lines layer and my magic wand, and we're going to select that plus this, plus this, plus that column, plus that column, plus that column, plus up here. Hold on a second. I need to zoom in a little bit. All right, so I have all of that selected. That is for the concrete. I'll turn the concrete back on, and I'll click on the Add Layer Mask, and it now cuts it out for my piece of the building there. So we'll go ahead and turn back on the background like that. And so let's see here. Let's turn. I'm going to push my lines layer up a little bit and change it to multiply, just so that I can see that line through. So now I said we were going to do some lighting or some lighting effects. And so we're going to do that on a new layer. So I'm going to create a brand new layer, and I'm going to call this layer Lighting. And on this lighting layer, I'm going to change the blending mode not to multiply, but to something called Soft Light. So we'll pick Soft Light as our blending mode. And then I'll come over to the paintbrush. I'm going to use a brush. I'm going to have to get this a little bit smaller. Yeah, that'll work. With a very soft brush. So it's at 0% hardness. And I'm going to change my color to be kind of a yellowy gold color, something like that. Now I'm going to start as if there was a recessed ceiling light right here. And I'll make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'll start right there, and I'll work my way down like that. You guys can see that a little bit. In reality, I probably need a little bit softer yellow. This is going to turn out a little bit dark. So I'll either do an adjustment layer afterward, or I'll go back. But for your sake, I'm going to do it so that you can see it a little bit better in the scene. So I've got one stripe that goes all the way down. Well, light naturally kind of fans out and makes cones on the wall. So I'm going to work my way up in brush size as I go down, like that.
How do you scale in your brush size?
The bracket key. The bracket key. So I'll go back down, and we'll start right there, and I'll go straight down. Then we'll bracket key up, make it a little bit bigger, bracket key up, make it a little bit bigger. So you can see that I've created those kind of fake cones. The problem here is that this is applying outside and not just to my walls. So I need to make sure that the lighting that I'm doing applies only to the interior of the building. So on my lighting layer, I need to create a mask. Let me go back to my lines, magic wand, and we're going to select these interiors. And in this case, we might include the entire interior. So let me work my way through here. Okay, I believe I have all of the interior now selected, and we can add to the lines layer, we can add a layer mask there. And it looks like it's affecting a little bit outside, so I'm going to have to make an adjustment on what it's doing here. Let me be on the layer mask. Let me do a paintbrush with black. I want this to be a hard brush, so the opposite. I'll make this a little bit smaller. Oh wait, sorry. I made the layer mask on the wrong layer. That's my mistake. Let me do it on the correct layer. There we go. Yeah. So now my soft light is applying to the interior of the building. I can do a few more soft lights, so I'll be on the soft light layer. This time I'm actually going to do it a little bit better. I'm going to do more of a pale yellow, which is what it should be. And I need that nice soft brush. And we'll start at one place, and we'll work our way down and down, down, and down. We'll make this a little bit larger, and we'll go down, 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 and down. A little bit larger, down, down, down. Okay, something like that. You guys probably can't see it, but if you trust me, it will show up. This one, again, not entirely happy with that. It probably needs to be a lighter yellow, but you get the idea. Okay, so now that I have the lighting that's been done as part of it, we can go ahead and turn back on the airbrush and the pen tool. Now, one of the other things about a section that can be extraordinarily useful is to give yourself some sense of scale. And the easiest way of doing that is to put a person in. So I'm going to go ahead and add a person. And I think when you're doing a section, the easiest way of adding a person is to find one that is a silhouette rather than one that is an actual person. So remember, you guys did those cutouts way back when of people. You can go on the course website and you can find those cutouts. Or if you have them saved on your flash drive, you can load those up as well. I'll go to File and then Place. And I'm going to go ahead and get the person. And in this case, it was a guy here. I have a color version, I have a black and white version, I have a gray version. I'm going to use the gray version as a silhouette. I'll place that in. And I want to make sure that his height is appropriate for the scale of the room. So it's probably right about there is his height. So he's in here. Let me go ahead and place him. There we go. I don't want the silhouette to show the lines through, so I'm going to adjust the person to be on top of everything so he's like that. But I also think it would look better. Well, one, he's a little bit off the ground. Let's drop him down. But two, I think it would look better if he wasn't gray. I think he needs to be black. So I'm going to add an adjustment layer to him. So let me go to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, and let me do a Levels Adjustment. And I'm going to press Control-Alt-G to tie that together. It's just applying to that. And then we're going to see if we can't convert him to be in black, like that. I think that looks a little bit better because of the way the cut is made. The other thing is I've paid attention to what he looks like and which direction he's looking. It wouldn't make sense for him to be here. It makes sense for him to be on this side because he's looking that way. So you want to pay attention to who you're putting in and how they fit into the scene. I could also put him over here, or I could put a different person in a different place. Obviously, he shows up better here than he does right here. But somehow, having him in this room seems like the right place for him as part of the composition. So now I have, if I press Control 0, I have a section going through my building. I have a person in for scale. I'm seeing this really nicely. Sometimes the photographic background works nicely. Sometimes you want it to kind of fade away. So I can choose to make the background fade a little bit more if I wanted to. Furthermore, I could also add an adjustment layer to turn it to black and white or something different if I wanted that look. It's really dependent on what feels right. I'll do the fade just so that you guys can see it here. Let me go back to my lines. Let me do my magic wand to select the outside here. I'll go to my background on the layer mask here. I'm going to go to gradient, and I'm going to go from black to white from top to bottom here, which is going to fade the top out. Maybe a little bit more, something like that. It's hard because you guys aren't seeing.
Could you do the gradient?
Yes, I will. I'm trying to, hold on a second. Let me make these go away for just a second. There you go. So just so you can see that it goes to transparent. Okay. So to do that gradient, let me back up a second. We'll go right back to here. Oops, let me go back to, no, too far back. Step forward. Move these back on, turn that off. There we go. Okay, so I wanted to add that gradient to the background layer. It has to be on the mask of the background, which is here. But I already have an existing mask that cuts out for the building. I know I want it to apply up here. So what I'll do is on the lines layer, I'll use the magic wand to select the sky, which gives me a selection of just the sky. I'm ignoring the building for right now. And with that selection, I'll then go to the mask for the background layer. And just like we've done before with paint, if I were to paint, for example, black here, it would become transparent. Instead of just painting it, though, I'll use the gradient tool, which is right here. The gradient goes from black to white. And if I start at the top here and I drag a line down, it's representing that gradient. So black being at the top, which would be completely transparent, white being at the bottom of my line, which would be completely opaque. I'll shoot for it being right about at the top of the building. And so now this fades into white. And the reason that you would do something like this is on the back of on the big poster board or something, if you have a colored image, it's a sharp square. If you want it to live at the bottom and just bleed into the drawings and stuff that are up above, fading it into the background makes sense. So you just want to think about what the ultimate purpose of it is. Okay? So we're going to do sections today. You're going to create this section here. I do want you to put a person in and make sure that you filled in. Try to do the lighting because I think that's a good exercise to go through. It depends a little bit on the mood of your photo and whatever, but I think it's a good strategy. If we wanted the lighting to show up a little bit more, in this room, for example, it's a little bit darker. I could dodge and burn the background just a little bit. So let me just show you that real quick. I'll go to New, Layer. We'll call this Shadow, Bedroom. Oh, wait, sorry. When I create it, I have to fill it with the gray. So let me delete that for a second. You go to Layer, New, Layer. This is Shadow, Bedroom. And I'm going to change my mode to be Overlay, fill with the neutral gray. Say OK. But I want that to apply only to the concrete texture. So Control-Alt-G, just to the concrete texture. Then I could use my dodge and burn. Sorry. Burn. And I could darken up the upper parts of that background to provide a little bit more shadow up top. It's subtle, but it can help a little bit there. Okay, and it certainly shows the lighting a little bit better. Unfortunately, this lighting is just too strong. I'm going to have to redo it for a lighter color of yellow. Okay, so I'm going to turn you guys loose to do this section. Next week, we're going to do the perspective, which is kind of the culmination of everything in Photoshop. But if you get these kind of pieces down, I think you'll feel pretty good. Remember your assignment 106, which is 3 of the 4, plan, section, elevation, perspective. You pick whatever 3 you want to turn in. It's 3 of those 4. That's due on Wednesday of next week, last day of class. And then we have the final portfolio due Monday the 22nd. Okay? So we finish up real quick.
At what time the final?
The final is from 8 to 10. Go back and double check the assignment in terms of there's certain, like I expect you to have turned it in to me by a certain time. Remember that at 10 o'clock, everything's over. So if you make a post at 10:01 of a resubmit for an assignment, it doesn't count. Okay? When 10 o'clock hits, class is officially over for the semester. There's nothing more you can do. You can't add any more comments. You can't do anything. Okay? That's the cutoff for the class. I try my best with grading to finish that day. If I don't, it'll spill over to Wednesday of that week, which is the next day I'm here. At the absolute latest, it would be done that Wednesday. So I try to get them back to you really fast. Okay? I thought I would have grade sheets for you today. I don't. I apologize. I will have them next Monday so that you guys can see where you are, where your comments are, and all that kind of stuff. Okay? If you have any outstanding stuff, now would be a good time to post it because I haven't done the grading. I'll do the grading, and then you'll be updated. Okay? If you think you're current, don't worry about it. I'm just reminding you. Okay.